Hello everybody and welcome to my channel High Level Coder, and in this session I'm going to discuss about some of the interesting annotations of Spring Boot. So Spring Boot is a annotation heavy framework. It does a lot of things internally. It gives a lot of power if you are able to use the basic annotations. So I will try to explain to you the concepts of or the underlying working of all the important annotations of Spring Boot in this video. But before I proceed, one quick request to you is, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel and if you like my video explanation, then please go ahead and subscribe to my channel and also like my video, and also please view my other videos and share with your friends, provide feedback, because that would further motivate me to produce quality videos. Okay, so coming back, this is the basic Spring Boot annotation, which is at Spring Boot application. So in a Spring Boot application, we have one main starter class, which in this instance is this one, wherein we have a main method, and we need to annotate that class with this specific annotation, because this tells the Spring Boot container that this is the main class, and it would then bootstrap the Spring Boot server. So this is the main annotation at Spring Boot application. Now, apart from that, there are some other annotations which we apply to the controller layer, which is the entry point for any HTTP request which comes within the Spring Boot application. So number one is the one which you can see on the top is at REST controller. At REST controller tells Spring Boot that this is a REST controller, and this is also a class which needs to be managed by Spring Boot. It needs to be instantiated and managed by Spring Boot, and Spring Boot will be responsible for its life cycle, will be responsible for actually diverting all the specific HTTP request for this object to this particular class. So the next annotation at request mapping, what it tells Spring Boot is any request which maps to the URL API/1/profile should be mapped to this class. And then we can have different methods within this class, where each of the method can have a subsection or the sub part of the URL, which is the last part of the URL after that profile, so that when that particular URL is requested, then that specific method will be called. Say for example, under profile, we can have maybe 4 URLs. Each of the 4 URLs can be mapped to 4 different methods. Like here you can see that with @get mapping, we have mapped another URL which is a dynamic customer name which will come, and that is the URL that we have mapped. So the entire URL will look like API/1/profile, then some dynamic string which would be the customer name. So that dynamic string is in the path parameter, and that would be accepted by Spring Boot. So that's what the that's what the request mapping and the get mapping come in a combined way does. That it basically redirects any HTTP traffic which is meant for API/1/profile/ any specific string to this particular method. Okay. There are a couple of other annotations like at all args controller and at cross origin. At all args controller has got nothing to do with Spring Boot. That is something which is coming from Lombok, which is a tool which helps us to generate getters and setters in an automated way. And at cross origin tells Spring Boot that this particular method can accept web request coming from the server localhost 3000. Some other annotations like at service layer annotation, at service annotation, or at component annotation are also indications to the Spring Boot that this class needs to be instantiated and managed by Spring Boot. Please refer to my other video over there, which is on Spring Boot inversion of control, where I have explained this concept in detail, that Spring Boot is responsible for creating our objects and also for managing our objects, but we need to indicate to Spring Boot that these objects need to be created and managed by Spring Boot. We do it with at service or at component or with at REST controller annotations. So in a Spring Boot project, we will see that we will never almost do a new instantiation. We will never ourselves instantiate any particular class. We will never use the new operator as such. that will be used internally by the Spring container, by Spring Boot, to actually instantiate the object on our behalf. Also, a couple of other annotations are there at all arts constructor and at SLF4J. They are also from Lombok, which is our very dear friend. At all arts constructor helps to generate basically the constructor with all the arguments, and at SLF4J helps us to actually do logging. But I am not going into detail of Lombok because I will create a separate video which will be dedicated to Lombok. So that's it. Thank you for your patience. I hope you got a summary, you got the basic essence of what the annotations of Spring Boot are, what are the main annotations of Spring Boot are, and what do they do. But please do not worry if you do not understand everything, and those annotations are really deep, and our main job as a developer is to actually use the annotation and write our business logic. So please do not try to understand, go into the real complexity, because those annotations are really complex internally. They have a lot of depth. So try to understand what annotation which you need to use and what it does, so that you can implement your business logic correctly. Okay. And last but not the least, again, if you liked my explanation and video, please watch my other videos as well. Subscribe to my channel and like the video and share it with your friends and whoever need it, because that's going to motivate me further to produce quality videos. Thank you very much.